Terry L. Fossum here again. We're going to continue our talk about excuses from the Blow Your Bolts audio series. Now, if excuses have ever held you back, you're not alone. They've held pretty much all of us back. And they're so powerful because, as you might have heard me say before, excuses are lies that we tell ourselves because we want to believe it's not our fault. And excuses make sense to us. We justify things, don't we? Well, let me tell you a story. On a 50-mile backpacking trip deep in the Eagle Cap wilderness of Oregon State, one of our party became severely dehydrated, a 17-year-old boy by the name of Davis. Now, as a result of this extreme dehydration, his nasal passages began cracking and the blood flowed through his nose. Now, we were scheduled to summit Eagle Cap the next day, but we knew we'd have to leave Davis behind at our camp, along with the others who were too infirmed or injured to make that final thrust up the peak. Now, that night, things got worse for Davis. Because he had swallowed so much of his own blood, he began throwing up blood. In fact, he was throwing up blood all night long. His tent looked like a mass murder scene. There was blood all over his tent, blood all over his sleeping bag, his clothing. There was blood everywhere. It was a little scary, to tell you the truth. Now, naturally, he slept very little that night. And the next morning, he looked like he'd gotten in a fight with a bear, with sunken eyes and pale skin, blood all over his face. And I think the bear won. But we noticed something about Davis that morning. See, those sunken eyes, there was a spark in those sunken eyes. Now, granted, it was a dim spark, but it was a spark nonetheless. Then we noticed something else. As we were putting together our gear to make that final push up to the peak, so was Davis. "What are you doing?" I asked him. "Well, I'm getting ready to summit." He said, "Just a matter of fact." I'm like, "Are you crazy? You're barely standing up. There's no way in the world you're going to be able to make it up to the top." This was amazing. He looked at me square in the eyes and he said, "Look, for the rest of my life, I'm going to look back on this moment. Will I look back at it as the time that I quit? The time that I kept going no matter what? I have to try." So Davis and I walked side by side up that mountain. A turtle could have passed us without even trying, without even breaking a sweat, but we kept pushing forward. Now, several times he had to stop, but every time he kept going. Now, other hikers passed us up and made it to the top relatively quickly, but Davis didn't care. He realized that the competition wasn't with them, but with himself. The altitude was growing higher and the air thinner, making even breathing a chore. We couldn't see the top from where we were, so we couldn't see if we were getting close or if we were still a long ways away. We could only see the path directly ahead of us, step by painful step. Davis had every excuse in the world not to summit that day. No one would have faulted him for not trying, for staying back, for cleaning up his tent. Those of us who had his best interest in mind kept trying to talk him out of it. Has that ever happened before to you? People have our best interest in mind. They really do. When they're giving us reasons that we don't have to do something, that we shouldn't do something. And sometimes we have best interest of others in mind when we're telling them the same thing. But here's the deal. If Davis hadn't tried, he would have been completely justified. And he wouldn't have reached the top. He would have stayed in his tent talking about why he wasn't able to do it, with everyone around him going, "Yep, it was a good thing you didn't try. It would have been impossible. You did the right thing." But the thing is, it wasn't impossible. It was hard. But hard means it's possible. I want to say that again. Hard means it's possible. So if you or someone else says, "But it's hard," I want you to change that statement right now in your head. If hard means possible, then "but it's hard" means "but it's possible." That right there is a huge mind shift that can make the difference between you quitting or succeeding, from giving up to getting on, from whining to winning. See, no matter what Davis' excuse was, no matter what his reason for not attempting the summit that day, the bottom line is he wouldn't have summited Eagle Cap. He would never have known the view from the top. But the fact is, Davis did summit Eagle Cap that day. There may be no better feeling in the world than knowing you've faced down terrible obstacles, you've endured terrible pain, but you kept on going no matter what and reached your goal, reached your own pinnacle. So the next time the excuses start bleeding in, the next time they start making sense, the next time you think, well, maybe they're right, maybe I should quit, I want you to remember back to Davis. I want you to remember Eagle Cap. And I want you to go on and reach your own summit.